Welcome to the WingSpace Podcast, a place to take up space, where we talk about all things wellness, from nutrition to movement to sleep and stress, and so much more. With me, your host, Jennifer Voorhaar, along with special guests and experts within our Hope and Healing wellness community. Let's jump in.
This podcast is not a replacement for mental health treatment or professional health care. In case of crisis or emergency, please contact your local healthcare provider or dial 911.
Hey there, and welcome to the WingSpace Podcast, a place to take up space. I'm your host, Jennifer Voorhaar, and with me today, we have our certified nutrition specialist, Tracy Pritchard, and we are going to be talking about nutrition and weekends. And if you're one of those people who just crushes it all week long, and then you find yourself Sunday evening just saying that the weekend fell apart and you're going to start fresh Monday morning, then this episode is for you. So, Tracy, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me again.
And, this is something that we hear a lot, both in your nutrition space and also in the mental health space, just this idea of constantly starting over and Monday just being that fresh start over and over again. So what do you see in terms of within your practice with clients, and how can we best support people to not have to start over every Monday?
That's a really good question. So I think what happens is we have a lot of really disciplined and dedicated, motivated folks who come through here. And especially those that are working full time, they have a game plan that starts Monday morning when they're shot out of a cannon and it ends Friday as on their drive home from work. So they've got their meals planned, they've got their activities planned, but then once Friday hits, it's like, whew, they can take a break. But all of the planning just went out the window. There's zero plan, which is interesting because if you think about it now, these are folks who are literally counting out how many grapes they're eating on Wednesday for their snack, but Friday night they're at a restaurant not even considering, appetizers, desserts, drinks, like all the things. It doesn't take away from the success they had during the week, but it becomes an all or nothing. So I encourage people to just focus on the healthy lifestyle and bring that same thought that you'd have on a Tuesday to a Saturday. So I like numbers. If you look at Monday morning through Friday lunch, that's 14 meals. That's without considering snacks. But Friday dinner through Sunday dinner is still 7 meals. So 14 meals during the week, 7 meals for a weekend. So if we just have no plan, we're planning to fail at that point.
Yeah, a third of your meals are
Mm-hmm.
potentially down the drain. And what we see from a mental health perspective is that Friday afternoon, I don't want to call it an adrenaline dump because that's really not what it is, but it's more of a, kind of, I've worked really hard all week. I'm so stressed out. It's finally over. And giving ourselves permission for a few extra drinks, or I'm not cooking dinner tonight, or you guys are on your own come Saturday, whatever. And so there's the nutrition planning and preparing and setting ourselves up piece of it. But then there's also the mental health stress relief and stress management that are really working hand in hand here.
Sure. And it's interesting because schedules are different, right? Like if you don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, why would you? So if during the week you're like, well, I get up at 6 and I have breakfast by 7 and I'm on my way and it works great. Well, maybe you just take that simple habit of eat within an hour of waking up and do that Saturday and Sunday, even if you're getting up at 8 or 9. But too often on the weekends, people say, well, I get up, I don't really think about breakfast, I go run my errands, yet they ate breakfast every day during the week. And to take it back to like the planning, the mental load, like whether you live alone or you are married or you have kids or not, you still need to eat on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So maybe it's like, hey, during the week, I'm going to cook a little extra. So by Friday night, everyone just is on their own with leftovers. Or maybe you come up with a theme where, hey, Friday nights, we're doing pizza. And if in the past it was always the really easy takeout pizza that you always felt like, I'll just eat it because it's easy. Maybe you find a better pizza. Either you make a better pizza, you look in the frozen section for a pre-made crust, but you can still enjoy Friday evenings and pizza and movies if that's what your family does. But maybe just make it a little better.
And I'd be curious too for our listeners to think about if they are a person who does meal planning, are you planning Sunday night through Friday and having the mentality of we'll figure it out on the weekend? Or are you including a plan for Friday night and Saturday into Sunday? Because you just said it, right? Failing to plan is planning to fail. So,
Hmm.
if we're not planning Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're just setting ourselves up. And there's a reason why a lot of times meal plans that we give out or like the it's time to eat plans that you give out, it goes Sunday to Saturday for a reason because all the
It
days count.
It does. In fact, I kind of joke with my clients that, our metabolism doesn't know if it's a Saturday or a Tuesday. Just like sleep, it still matters, right? Like I realize we get off our week schedule on the weekend, but sometimes we pay for it, right? It's like, ooh, is that really worth staying up late? Yeah, that being said, part of planning might be eating out. Maybe it's like, hey, Saturday nights I eat out. And then I would say, where are you eating out? Can you look at a menu before you go? Can you still follow the general healthy eating principles if that's a goal that you have for yourself?
And you and I have talked before, not only just here in the office, but also on the podcast before. Going out to eat doesn't have to be a complete sabotage, right? But a lot of times people will order a sugary, calorie laden drink. They'll order an appetizer. They'll eat the bread that's brought to the table. Then they'll eat the meal and maybe even get some dessert, which means you've had, a lot of everything in one sitting. And maybe if that's Friday night, your body's already stressed from the week, and then you just gave it so much more to try to metabolize. And with my mental health hat on, we do well during the week. We have good energy, good focus and attention. We're motivated. Our stress is low. And then we don't do those same things on the weekend. So we're kind of starting Monday feeling frazzled and not really prepared because we haven't fueled and fed our body well over the weekend.
Right. Most people aren't like, woohoo, it's Monday morning, let's go. But what if midweek, maybe you plan your whole week, including the weekends, or maybe on Wednesday or Thursday, you're like, what's the weekend plan? And we're not looking for perfect. You've heard me say the 80-20 solution, but having that plan to get through the weekend, which then allows you to get through the week better. I know that you're busy with a lot of activities and sports and travel. If this weekend was a weekend that you were going to travel, you would still plan for what are my snacks? Am I in a car? Am I on an airplane? Do I need a cooler bag? Because you still have to eat on those days. So if you don't have a plan, now it's just like you're going to get what you get on the road or at a party or other places. I like to go to parties, but depending on what time the party is at, if the party's at 3 p.m. to 5, let's just call it that. I don't typically eat between 3 and 5. If I eat lunch at noon and eat dinner at 6. So maybe I'd have a light snack there or an hors d'oeuvre thing, even a treat. But I'm not going to go there and eat a whole nother meal if that's just a part of my plan. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to go to the party. But we can't go anywhere without food these days, right? Like if we have an event, we have food and drinks and
Yeah, and where does everybody tend to congregate? Right around the island in the kitchen where all the food is. And then while you're just sitting and chit-chatting and catching up, you're just mindlessly eating. And, speaking of that mindless eating, if we're watching movies or maybe a little bit more TV on the weekends, what are we doing? We're mindlessly eating or snacking or just not really paying attention to what we are consuming and setting ourselves up for not really erasing everything we did Monday through Friday, but gosh, starting over again is exhausting.
that makes me think of the mindless. So let's say I went to a party from 3 to 5 and I was like, "Oh, like lots of snacks, cheese and crackers, mindlessly eating." Didn't really think about it. I suspect I'd go home and think, "Well, I'm not hungry, so I'm going to skip dinner." But then now I'm probably going to late night snack again, but never really ate that meal, didn't have the right amount of, protein, carbs and all that. I'll tell you too, like there's nothing better than football. I like football. I know for my college football people that Saturdays I watch NFL as well, go Bills. And last weekend, the game was at 8:20 p.m. So my family was like, "Oh, are we going to have football snacks?" And I was like, "No, it's almost bedtime." like we'll have dinner, and if they need something because they're hungry, but that wouldn't be a game that I'm putting the spread out on my kitchen table. Now the 4 o'clock game, the 1 o'clock game, you betcha. 1 o'clock I'd call it lunch, 4 o'clock I'd call it early dinner. But looking ahead to why would I eat again at 8:20? That just for our family, that just doesn't make sense. Now, Super Bowl Sunday could be a whole different deal. I know people do their things, but what are we doing on a consistent basis, Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
Yeah, there's so much social norm or what we think is social norm that goes around eating. We don't have to throw it all out the window come the weekend. We don't have to just eat mozzarella sticks and fried chicken wings for Sunday football. Because here, I'm curious, what does your football spread look like?
So that's a good question. I do like to have a veggie tray that would have like hummus and guacamole. I might do something with chicken. It could be like a baked chicken wing. It might be chicken tenders. I might do a buffalo chicken where I actually like shred my own chicken and put it out. I always have something sweet out there, so that could be something made with dark chocolate. So it's the same idea as what other people do, but I try to make more nutritious versions of it so I can feel good about making the plate.
Yeah, it's about starting with swaps. Maybe it's not this Sunday or Saturday if you're a college football person. You switch everything out, but I don't know. Maybe you put hummus and guac out with the veggies instead of ranch dip. Or, maybe you try some baked chicken wings instead of breaded and fried, right? Just little things start as small little habits that turn into bigger things.
BJ's sells these little chicken skewers and it's already like pre-cooked chicken. So you just have to heat it up. You can like throw it in the oven for 10 minutes or in the microwave. And how great are those on a plate? A, they're easy with a high quality barbecue sauce that has low sugar or whatnot instead of something fried, right? Or if you're going to do pizza, can you make your own flatbread pizzas? But there's really endless options for the football spread. But my goal is when I put it out, that if someone wanted to make a healthy meal or snack, that there's something with protein, some type of complex carbohydrate that might be fruit, some type of vegetable, and some kind of treat.
Well, and I think sometimes when we set out those spreads, we put the little plates out thinking that people will just take a little. But then what tends to happen is we go back and fill that plate more. So, what if we considered putting the regular size plate so that then people can fill up that side of veggies like we want them to? And, you know, it might feel like more, but if it's dinner, right, we want it to be a meal. We want it to be a complete healthy meal. So, let's make it that.
Sure. And if you're, enjoying social things, whether it's a football game or something else on TV, and people say, well, what can I bring? Think about what you're already going to serve. And maybe you're like, oh, I've got this whole category of food that's missing. And most people would be happy to bring something if you gave them an idea. Otherwise, they're going to go through the grocery store and bring like, the plastic container of pre-made sugar cookies, right? And those just get plopped on a table. But most people, if you said, hey, will you bring XYZ? They're like, sure.
And people are going to eat what you put out. So they're not gonna starve if you put baked chicken wings instead of fried chicken wings. They're gonna eat the baked chicken wings.
Right. I have a friend who introduced me to, because she likes to make it from scratch. She'll take, I think it's like dates and she'll wrap it in a piece of bacon. Like, but she makes it from scratch. So there's no, preservative. She uses a higher quality bacon. It's still a date, but it's delicious. Like, it's not something I had before. Maybe she stuffed some of the dates, but how fun is that?
Well, and part of it is thinking outside of the box too. You mentioned those chicken skewers at BJ's. And, I'll just shout out to you and to, the big box store. Back in early part of the summer, I had to go on a trip and unfortunately had to bring all of my own food as a person with celiac. I had to make sure I was, eating in a safe way all week. And you were so gracious to, send me pictures and direct me to what to get. I had no idea that those kinds of easy to make. I mean, I had access to a microwave for an entire week. So, I ate out of that shopping trip. And I just think sometimes we go to those stores or we just go with certain things in our mind and we don't think outside of the box. We don't think of, wow, let me look at this pre-made thing that could make my Friday night meal so much easier to make because 10 minutes in the oven is so much easier than coming home and cutting all the chicken and putting it on the skewer and then having it cook for 30 or 45 minutes, 10 minutes in the microwave or even probably in an air fryer. I don't know, those sticks might catch on fire, but making things simpler but still healthy.
Well, when people are on a new health kick, and they know all the things all of a sudden, right? Like they want to debate about things or they have their comments, which I appreciate. Like I love when people are like into it, but we often lose the forest for the trees. So, for example, yes, if I could always find and afford enough organic pasture raised chicken, ideally, if I knew the farmer and I knew what they fed the chicken, and then I could bring it home and prepare it and marinate it with a sauce that I made myself from scratch using teaspoons and tablespoons, that would be great. And then bake it. I don't want to do that Friday night. In fact, I don't often want to do that during the week. I am the queen of shortcuts, but good enough shortcuts. So, for example, I have no affiliation with Kevin's Foods, but Kevin's is a brand out there that is paleo, which means it's gluten free and dairy free. Again, it's at one of the stores in town. And my daughter loves orange chicken. Orange chicken typically is not something that I would put in a health food category, like if you got it from a fast food restaurant. Kevin's makes an orange chicken. It's not inexpensive, but 4 servings, I think, was like $17, a good nutrition profile, not a lot of added sugar, a good amount of protein. I did it in the microwave, and on a Friday night, that with maybe a bag of rice or quinoa that I could put in the microwave or just already cooked saute in a pan and some frozen steamed veggies. That was while it was an expensive thing, it was still way cheaper than eating out and we enjoyed the heck out of it, but it still was a balanced meal.
I think sometimes people, and I found myself in this same situation the other day. I think sometimes we equate cooking with taking a lot of time and energy, and it doesn't have to. I was visiting a friend, and s- my husband was jokingly saying something about, I'm going to get spoiled by having a home cooked breakfast every morning, and I said, ain't nobody got time for that. I'm not making breakfast every morning. And my friend's husband said, I mean, Jen, it takes like 5 minutes to put some, pre-cooked chicken or a pre-cooked turkey sausage in the microwave while you scramble up an egg and maybe add some fresh fruit or, I don't know, throw some spinach into he's like, it takes 5 minutes. He's right. It doesn't take long to scramble an egg and to put some turkey sausage in the oven or in the microwave. I love throw spinach with my scrambled eggs. But in my mind, it's cooking breakfast. I don't have time to cook breakfast.
Right, but I suspect if you went through Starbucks or Dunkin', you would spend 5 minutes in the carpool in the line
For sure. Yeah.
easily. Yep.
Yeah.
Now that
More
but that being
time.
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say more time, more money, and certainly less healthy.
Sure. And for my clients that are like truly shot out of a cannon and can't control the morning, a lot of times it's because we don't want to clean up. It's not actually the cooking. It's even like, oh, I don't want to clean my blender. So, because if certain blenders people don't like to put in the dishwasher. So I'm like, well, make it the night before, clean the blender. But something like the egg and sausage, I would encourage you to say, hey, while you're meal prepping your other things, why don't you meal prep breakfast? Make an egg bake so that when you're doing the rest of your meals, you're doing your breakfast as well.
Oh, shout out to that egg bake that you gave me a recipe for recently. I don't know. Maybe we'll drop it in the show notes. It was eggs, whatever vegetables you wanted, some black beans. It was so good. So good. Who would have thought to put black beans in with eggs? It was so good.
There's another one. I know my dairy-free people won't appreciate this, but it has like quinoa, cottage cheese, and I was making this before cottage cheese was cool again. Cottage cheese, eggs, but it's like a hearty breakfast because I get stuck on like the yogurt parfaits and the smoothies, but then I rotate the eggs back in and other things. So yeah, but why not put breakfast on meal prep? Just like everything else.
Well, and so many times we think of breakfast as a sweet meal rather than savory. And those big breakfasts are for the weekends or special occasions. Well, it doesn't have to be. I mean, it can be, like you said, that egg bake is easy enough to do on a Sunday. And then the recipe you gave me, I think it cut into 6 pieces. So if I make it Sunday, I've got Monday through Saturday, which means I've got breakfast for the whole week. And you can always throw something a little different into it, right? If I wanted to one morning have some berries or one morning have a banana, make, yes, my bake is the same, but I don't know. Maybe one morning I throw salsa on it to make it a little bit different, and then I for 6 days.
Well, and I kind of joke if it's good enough for breakfast, it's good enough for lunch. So maybe one day it's breakfast, but then the next day, if you don't have a lunch plan, it turns into lunch. But back to skipping breakfast or something sweet, we've really kind of messed that up because a lot of people are like, oh, I'll just eat something light and they're eating a snack for breakfast because they say, oh, I'm not really hungry. And then they move into lunch and dinner, but then they're snacking all night long. Hence, they wake up and they're not hungry the next morning. But if if that's somebody who's listening, I would encourage them to actually eat a meal for breakfast. Like if it's something you would eat for lunch or dinner, eat that amount, like a 500 calorie ish breakfast, and see what happens during the day. You might not just be like hearing all that food noise between breakfast and lunch or lunch and dinner if in fact you're eating balanced meals.
Then, of course, we have to combat the person that says, "Yeah, but I'm not hungry," or "It makes me sick if I eat breakfast in the morning." You gotta start small. You gotta start somewhere. You're not
Sure.
eating anything for breakfast, let's start with something. If you're eating something for breakfast, let's make it a little bit more because you're absolutely right. I know for me, those mornings that I have a good solid breakfast, I am I'm not ravenous by the time I get home, and then I'm snacking while I'm making dinner. If I try to be too quick about things in the morning, then I just, I try to hold it together and then I get home and it's like, okay, here's a wide open pantry while I'm making a healthy meal for dinner. And I could have just saved myself all that in the pantry. And I'm sure there's other people that do that same thing. It's that witching hour.
Well, it also goes back to the morning routine, which I know you've talked about in other podcasts. And I know you have intentional mornings. If you're shot out of a cannon in the morning and the breakfast is the last thing you're thinking about, maybe you just need to think about your whole routine and go to bed 30 minutes earlier so you have 30 minutes in the morning so you don't feel frazzled, right?
I was listening to a podcast and I heard somebody say the other day that if you are a person who tends to say, "Oh, I don't have time for that," change that phrase to, "That's not a priority for me." And so how does that sound? And then how does it feel to hear those words? If I say, "Could you consider having a healthy breakfast?" and your immediate thought is, "Oh, I don't have time for that." Does it sound and feel a little bit different if I say, "Can you make a healthy breakfast?" and you say, "Oh, that's not a priority for me." Because then that
Interesting.
also means I'm not a priority for me, my health is not a priority for me. That feels a little different when we could easily make some shifts. I've said this before, and I know people may not agree, but, we all have 24 hours in the day, and none of us are getting more hours, none of us are getting less hours, we fill it differently, and you're right, I have a very intentional, morning routine. If you would have told me 10 years ago that I was getting up at 4:40 in the morning, I would probably laugh at you, but I didn't sleep very well last night. My husband's out of town. When he's not there, I typically don't sleep well. I think I got about 4.5 hours of sleep last night. But when that alarm went off at 4:40, I knew I had to. Because if I don't have that morning routine, which includes very intentional activities, then my whole day feels just shot. And I knew I had a busy day. I knew I had clients, I had podcasts to record, I had important things to do. So I made that time because that's what I need. So that person who says, I, I, I get shot out of a cannon every morning, I don't have time. What's it sound like if you say I get shot out of a cannon every morning? It's not important to me.
Very true. And to kind of bring that into the weekend where we have more time, but typically people just don't schedule anything. Like I find it interesting that people who have really busy weekdays takes which this is fine if this is their prerogative, take Saturday or Sunday as their day off from working out. It might make a lot more sense to take Tuesday off because you have way more time on Saturday or Sunday to do a workout, shower, walk, talk to the neighbors, whatever. But like you've noticed, getting up at 4:40, you can do your whole day. If someone doesn't have the same rhythm to their weekdays and their weekends, the night before think, hey, what does tomorrow look like? Hey, tomorrow's wide open. Tomorrow might be a great day to do a Saturday, some extra meal prep. So when life gets busy later in the week, the month, I have it. Or I can go on a longer hike tomorrow. But going to bed kind of with a plan for the weekend. And the plan might be not get up and eat breakfast, but make a bigger brunch and a dinner, but at least having a plan of something from which to deviate, but having some idea of what the day might look like, where the errands might fit in, and take it from there.
So planning ahead, if you're going to make a big meal on a random Tuesday, make enough for Thursday night too. Make enough for Saturday night. You know, we're in my favorite season of the year. We're in soup, stew, chili season. Double that recipe and then have it later in the week, or double that recipe and do one that's easily freezable, and then you can take it out in the morning, you can defrost it. It's good to go. Making ourselves a priority is really important. I saw this thing the other day. It said something like, if you don't make your health a priority now, your illness will make it a priority in the future. And it's really true. We have to make ourselves a priority. I mean, would we tell our loved ones to just skip meals and drink coffee all day and don't stay hydrated and, oh no, you don't need to work out? Of course not. We would tell them, take care of yourself, feed, fuel your body, go for a walk, get that exercise. All right, Tracy, what's the big takeaway for our listeners today?
The big takeaway today is really just think about your weekend. I mean, has it just been something that you've just never thought about because it falls off the radar? So, like, it doesn't have to be a perfect plan, whatever that even means, but do you even have enough groceries to get you through the weekend? Or do you need to make that stop on Wednesday or Thursday for some fresh fruit? Maybe that's why you don't eat healthier on the weekends. It's because you ran out of everything, right? Or, do you have a plan to eat out and say, hey, let's take it up a notch, or host a potluck and encourage your friends to bring healthier foods to the football party or to the birthday party? But just kind of think, are you someone whose weekends are working against you? And is there something you can do to improve them?
Yeah, absolutely. And this episode is going to drop on a Wednesday. There's nothing saying you can't do meal prep or meal planning on a Wednesday. You can hit the grocery store tonight. You can plan for the weekend, whatever day you happen to be listening to this. Go ahead and get yourself set up for the weekend and keep that same routine. Your body's going to thank you later, for sure.
Okay, one more thing. Save round. I also find that my working crowd typically does really well during the week with water, but they don't drink water on the weekend. And they're like, I don't know why, but when I'm at work, it's something to do. I have my bottle with me. So, like, maybe on the weekends, you need to be more intentional and like put your water out on the cupboard and actually see it or track it on the weekends. You're doing great during the week, but figure out for you personally, why is it that you don't do those same things on the weekend? Your reason might be different than my reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Those routines are so important. Staying hydrated, staying in your sleep routine, having similar morning routines. Our bodies like routine. Our bodies know when to
Mhm.
expect what. And you mentioned the word drinking water, and I'm instantly ready to pick up my water bottle here. So getting people in those same routines on the weekend is so important. So Tracy, thanks so much for joining me today, listeners. I hope that you found a little nugget of information to take with you as you plan and prepare for your weekends. If you found this episode helpful, I would ask you to like, to share, be sure to subscribe, send this to someone who might be able to take a few nuggets for themselves as well. Thanks so much for listening and have a great day.